Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive into something pretty fascinating. We're talking about reading today and how it impacts our brains.
Reading and the brain sounds complex.
It is, but it's really cool too. We're basing this deep dive on an article called How Does Reading Affect Your Brain?
Oh, yeah, I saw that one. It's by Sufyan Manan, right?
That's him. It was published on Medium earlier this year. What I really liked about it was how Sufyan connects the science of reading with his own personal experiences.
Right, like growing up with very few books and then becoming this total bookworm.
Yeah, exactly. Now, he jokes about needing a flexible budget for all the books he buys.
Uh-huh. I think we've all been there. Let's face it, books aren't cheap these days.
So true.
Right.
But okay, let's get into the sciencey stuff. The article talks about how incredibly fast our brains process words when we read.
Yeah, it's like a fraction of a second. Right.
Yeah, he says it takes about half a second for our brains to recognize letters, make sense of them, and understand the meaning.
Wow. Half a second. What's actually happening in our brains during that time?
Well, it's like a chain reaction. First, our brains see the shapes of the letters, then they decode them into sounds and connect those sounds with their meaning.
I see. So our brains are basically doing a ton of work in the blink of an eye.
Exactly. And a lot of this action is happening in the temporal lobe.
The temporal lobe. That rings a bell. What's its role again?
It's kind of like the brain's headquarters for memory and language.
Oh, right. It's where we store and retrieve information, connect words with their meanings, and even process emotions tied to what we're reading.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it. Reading is really giving that part of our brains a workout.
It is. And speaking of workouts, Sufyan's article mentions that reading just 30 pages a night can actually make a difference.
Seriously, just 30 pages.
Yep. Studies have shown that reading regularly can boost activity in the temporal lobe, which is huge because that area is prone to decline as we age.
So reading could help keep our brains sharper as we get older.
It could. Some research even suggests that reading might lower the risk of dementia and help with emotional regulation.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So not just sharper minds, but maybe calmer ones too.
Possibly. Now, Sufyan also shares some practical tips for building a reading habit, something I'm always trying to get better at.
Me too. His whole approach to 30-day reading challenges really caught my attention. It's like he's training for a reading marathon.
What I found interesting was how he uses Stoic philosophy as part of his routine.
Oh, yeah. He mentioned starting each day with those short Stoic readings.
Right. He says it's like priming his brain for more reading, a kind of mental warm-up before diving into a book.
I like that analogy. It makes a lot of sense. You're
Yeah.
basically flexing your comprehension muscles early on.
Exactly. He also talks about using Kindle highlights in a unique way to remember what he's read.
Do you explain that a bit more? I'm curious.
Sure. Every Sunday, he goes back and looks at the key passages he's highlighted. It's like he's building his own personal encyclopedia of knowledge.
So he's not just passively reading, he's actively engaging with the material and making it stick?
Exactly. It's a
Yeah.
really smart strategy.
Okay, so we're activating the temporal lobe, building lasting knowledge. What other practical tips does he give? Does he have like a dedicated reading nook or something?
Well, not quite a nook, but he does talk about putting books in strategic spots around his house,
Oh, interesting. Like where?
especially by his bed. He says it encourages him to read even if it's just a few pages before he goes to sleep.
I see. So it's all about making reading easy and accessible.
Right. He really emphasizes making it part of his daily life.
It sounds like he's built a whole lifestyle around reading.
Yeah.
But does he explain why it's so beneficial? I mean, we've touched on dementia prevention, but is there more to it?
Oh, yeah, he does. He actually lists 7 benefits of reading that are good for your brain, and it's not just about memory or thinking better.
Really? 7. That's a lot.
Huh?
What else is he talking about?
Well, he mentions things like reducing stress, expanding your knowledge, improving how you communicate with others, and even boosting your overall mental health.
That's interesting that he connects reading with mental health.
Hmm.
I mean, we usually think of reading as a solo activity, but could it actually help us connect more with like ourselves and other people?
That's a really good point. Reading, especially fiction, can help us see things from different perspectives and experience a wider range of emotions and even develop more empathy.
So reading could help us become more emotionally intelligent.
Exactly. And by exploring all these different worlds and perspectives, we can start to question our own assumptions and get a better understanding of the world around us.
Okay, so we're talking about a more empathetic, nuanced, and informed version of ourselves, all thanks to reading.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Mhm.
But what I like about Sufyan's article is that he doesn't just tell us about the benefits. He gives us real actions to take, like that idea of creating a repository of knowledge through highlighting.
Yeah, I really like that idea too. It's about taking charge of your own learning and building a collection of wisdom that you can go back to and learn from.
It's like you're not just reading the words, you're actually making them a part of you. Sufyan even makes building a reading habit sound doable, almost like working out a muscle. Do you think that's a good analogy?
I think it is. You know, consistency is super important when you're learning any skill, and reading is no different. By making reading a regular thing, you're basically training your brain to focus better, adapt more easily, and process information faster.
So we're making those neural pathways stronger, becoming more agile thinkers.
Exactly. And those benefits, they go way beyond just reading. They can help with focus, critical thinking, even creativity. All those things are useful in any part of life.
It's funny, we always hear about those brain training apps and games, but sometimes something as simple and enjoyable as reading can have a much bigger impact.
It's true. And the best part is reading is so accessible and pleasurable. It's not just about making your brain work better. It's about expanding your horizons, discovering new things, and connecting with stories that move you.
You're making reading sound like a gateway to a richer inner life.
I think it really is. Reading lets you engage with the world in a deeper way. You connect with the thoughts and experiences of others, and you create a more vibrant and meaningful world inside yourself.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I'm already looking at my own reading list in a whole new way.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, what's the one key message you want our listeners to take away from this? What's the big takeaway?
For me, the biggest thing is that reading, it's not just a hobby, it's more like an investment.
An investment. I like
Oh.
that. What kind of investment are we talking about?
It's an investment in your brain and how you feel emotionally, even in like how rich your inner life is.
So it's not just about like stuffing your head with facts and figures.
Right. It's more about developing a certain way of looking at the world, becoming more curious, more understanding of other people even.
Sufyan's own story really shows how reading can change you, don't you think?
Oh, totally. He went from barely having any books to like curating his own library of knowledge.
It's pretty inspiring. It proves that reading can shape not just how we think, but who we are as people.
And that journey, it's open to anyone, really. It doesn't matter if you've always been a big reader or if you're just starting out.
There's a whole world of books out there waiting to be discovered.
Exactly. And every book is like a new adventure waiting to happen.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I have a question for all of you listening out there. What book will you choose to start or maybe continue your own reading journey?
It's a good question to think about. And remember, it doesn't have to be some super serious classic or the latest bestseller.
Right, it could be anything that interests you. Poetry, a graphic novel, a biography, you name it.
The most important thing is to find something that speaks to you, something you actually want to read and learn from.
And if you're looking for some ideas, Sufyan has a bunch of recommendations on his website. It might be worth checking out.
Oh yeah, he's got a great eye for finding those hidden gems.
So go ahead, embrace the power of reading. Unlock that amazing potential inside your own mind. And happy reading, everyone.